Welcome to Beyond the Screen. Today we're going to be talking about MCP servers. If you've never heard of that, you're in for a treat. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. We'll start sharing our screen and we'll talk about MCP, how it can work with your Tenable OT and integrate with AI at the same time to start automating and researching and really digging in without writing a full integration script. So let's go. The first thing we're going to do is go to a GitLab link, and I'll put this in the link below, but this is something that we created at ClearPath, I wrote, as a part of a way to help us integrate from an AI system, whether it be Claude AI or ChatGPT or eymbr.ai, which is our product, and really integrate with Tenable OT where you don't have to do all the API and the coding and all that sort of stuff. So if you're not familiar with MCP, MCP is a standard that was created by Anthropic, and it's fascinating because it gives us the ability to point our AI to our MCP server, and the MCP server does all of the hard work of integration already. Just basically gives our AI a list of tools that it can use to interact with whatever that endpoint is. In this case, we're talking about Tenable OT, but it could be anything. It could be vulnerability management from Tenable. It could be Nozomi. It could be Clarity. It could be your email for that matter, whether it be Google or whether it's on something like Office 365. So it allows your AI to communicate with other tools, and there's tons and tons of MCP servers that are out there. This episode will be talking about Tenable OT because that's what we do here, but it'll really help us understand the power between coupling up something like AI or an eymbr.ai in this case, and a tool like Tenable OT, and bringing them together under one umbrella to operate together in perfect sync, I guess I should say. Let's start with how in the world do I work with an MCP server? There's tons and tons of downloads out there, and this is just one example. Like I said, this ours. A lot of these are out there and offered through Docker. I'm going to open up a tab here and just do a quick search so you kind of get the idea. Now what you'll see here, even out on Docker, there's tons and tons of these MCP servers. And it can say like, what do you want? Like, do you want it to be through AWS? Do you want it to be Brave? Do you want it to actually tie in to like tons and tons of things like Desktop Commander? These go on and on. There's so many of these. In this case, we're going to go back to what we've written specifically for Tenable OT. The first step we want to do is how do we set this up? To walk through this, we're actually going to build this on a separate external server. And to give you an idea of the size of the server and what it really takes to run MCP, they're extremely light servers. So if I go and I look at my Proxmox setup, you're going to see that I have a Tenable OT MCP server here. I haven't installed anything on it yet. I just wanted you to see from a resource point of view what we've set up. We have 4 gigs of RAM and we have 2 processors. That's it. I gave it about 100, or I gave it 200 gigs of space here, but it's really only going to need about 40, maybe 50. And most of that is just for the operating system. To see what this looks like, I'm going to actually open up PowerShell and I'm going to log into that server. So I'm just going to SSH into it so that we can see what it looks like. And what you'll see is this is a regular Ubuntu server. We basically rolled it out. And if you look at the usage that's on it right now, it's really low. We're talking about a very light application. Now we don't have our MCP server on it, but I wanted you to be able to compare it. So I'm going to clear this up. And I'm going to move this out of the way for a second so that we can actually look at the instructions. I'm going to go down from my kind of air gap instances and I'm going to copy the code. So I'm just going to hit copy here. I'm going to go back over to my instance where I logged into my Ubuntu server, and I'm just going to paste. That's simple. I'm going to hit enter. And it's going to start cloning our repository. And it looks like we've wrapped up. This took about 1 minute. So it didn't take that long to do it. We did speed the video up a little bit, but this is a very quick process. What you'll notice is now I'm in the MCP folder. I'm going to go back to my instructions and look at what I need to do next. So if I go back over to here, it's going to tell me that the next thing I need to do is check the health of the system. And we're going to copy this command. It's going to say curl, and we're just going to make sure that our system is healthy. So I'm going to copy. I'm going to bring my command prompt back up. I'm going to paste this, and I'm going to hit enter. And we're going to get back that we have a status OK. So that means we're good to start configuring the system. I'm going to bring up my browser now, and I'm going to go to setup. I'm going to open a new tab. I'm going to go to HTTPS. I'm going to put in my IP address, 10.2.9.207. I'm going to put it on port 40443, and then I'm going to do /setup. I'll get a certificate error here just because it's a self-signed certificate. I'm going to proceed, and you'll see that I have a new setup. Now we're going to have to bring up Tenable OT because now we need to get some information from that side. Once again, I'm going to open up a new tab, and I'm going to go to Tenable OT. I'm going to log in. I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to go to system configuration, and then I'm going to go to API keys. Now you'll see I've been playing with this before so that we can delete these, and we want to create a new key. So I'm going to create an API key. We're going to say generate. I'm going to call this TOT MCP serve. That could be any name, by the way. I'm going to give this 300 days. I'm going to say generate. And so I need to have two things when I'm setting up my MCP server. I need to have my secret key, which is my API key, and I need to have the address. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say 10.2.9.200, and I need to put in my key. Now, because this is self-signed, we're not going to verify the TLS certificate because we'll end up with errors. The second thing I'll draw your attention to is, do we want to be able to write to Tenable OT? And there's a big caution here, because if you give AI the capability to write, it means it can run just about anything you need it to run on Tenable OT. It can be fully autonomous, which is scary. By default, it's turned off, but you can turn it on. For this demonstration, we're going to turn it on because we're going to play with this a little bit later on. So I'm going to say enable write keys. From there, I'm going to hit generate tokens. Now I'm going to remove these tokens later, so it's all right that you see this, but this is the most important part. Anytime you're connecting with any kind of MCP server, there's always some kind of token exchange where we're saying that we trust the device in some way to connect and to control that device. So you need a token to go back and forth and say this is authenticated. This is a standard that's being formed under, is actually formed under MCP. So most tools moving forward are going to automatically, once you have this token, be able to figure out what tools are, how they communicate with them, and what type of standards being used for authentication. So most of the MCP servers will actually tell the AI how it wants to be communicated to. Our server does the same thing. The MCP server will tell the actual AI how it wants to work with it. For this, when we're setting up the MCP, that's where it's trying to figure out how you're going to do that. So we're going to grab our actual key here, and I'm just going to copy it. And then it's telling me that I need to restart my server. So I'm going to bring it up over here. And now that everything's running, I'm just going to say Docker restart. As a matter of fact, so we can show these listings so that I'm not just doing something blind, you'll be able to see this. So I'm going to say sudo docker ps-a, and this is going to show me all my containers that are running right now. So what you'll see is I have this Tenable OT MCP server running. I'm going to copy this, and I'm just going to say sudo docker restart, and then I'm going to paste that in. We're restarted. We got a confirmation that this was the actual container that we're working on. So now I can go in and say, yes, I've restarted. That's all we had to do. Now the last piece is it's telling us, hey, when you want to point any device to MCP, all you got to do is use this address. So I'm going to copy this address because I'm going to have to use it a little bit later on. Now you can do this, like I said, with Claude AI. You can do this with whatever your favorite AI is. I'm going to show it in eymbr.ai and just talk about how easy this is to do. If I go over to my eymbr.ai, I'm going to go into my settings. I'm going to go to integrations and MCP servers. Now we don't have any here today, but I'm just going to say add server. I'm going to call this Tenable OT. I'm going to give it that address. I'm going to tell it I don't want to verify TLS again because we have self-signed certificates, and I'm going to probe the MCP server. It's going to probe and it's going to tell it how it wants to authenticate. Now remember, we need that key. So I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to copy my key. I'm going to paste my key in. I'm not going to verify, and I'm going to save. So what you'll see that just happened that easily is we've connected to the server. We figured out what we wanted to do, and now I have 114 different tools out of Tenable OT that the AI can now access. What does that mean? Well, if I hit details on this, it will list out every one of these in detail. Like I can query events, I can get events, I can list our different policies, I can modify policies, I can look at any sensors that are connected, I can query attack pathways, and I can do vulnerability clusters. I can figure out what active scans are running. This list goes on and on and on. But for you to see the way it really works, it means that we kind of have to talk to the AI. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to chat and create a new chat, and I'm going to ask eymbr, what tools do you have available to you within Tenable OT? Now remember, this is brand new. This isn't an integration that was written over time. We pointed to an MCP server, and the MCP server said, hey, eymbr, you have 100+ tools that you can work with. So now I'm going to ask eymbr, can she see those tools? Now this will take a minute as she starts to kind of ingrain all those tools for the first time. She's come back and told us that we have a comprehensive suite of tools for Tenable OT. She's actually grouped these together. So for asset and vulnerability management, she has discovery of vulnerabilities of assets. She can pull in all the metadata, threat detection and monitoring, network topology and analysis. You'll even see some of the zones as far as auditing against certain standards, scanning activities, administrative and group management as well. So we could actually go in and look at our instance now, asked to dig into some details. For instance, one of the big things that you'll see a lot of times in Tenable OT is this idea of an endpoint. And so I have a bunch of endpoints, but I don't necessarily know what they are. But let's say I do. Let's say I have an endpoint and I know that a specific endpoint is a Windows workstation. But right now, we're saying we don't know at all. So I can do something like, what can you tell me? First thing I can say is like, endpoint 183. And I'm going to get back very little information because as you saw, we weren't able to detect much in Tenable OT. And as you watch this go, I know this is a little bit slower, but what she's doing is looking through every one of the tools that she has available. She's digging into it and saying, what is the most information I can get off of this device? Now, what we can do, because we know the type, I'm going to ask if she can change the type from endpoint, right? And we want to actually change that over to a, let's say, workstation type or server type. Now, what we will see on the other side, where right now we're seeing endpoint 183 is actually an unknown, it's an endpoint. If we were to go look at this again in a few minutes, you'll see that it will absolutely change on us. I'm going to close this out while we're doing this. So now we get a message back that this has been updated. If I go back over here and I'm going to look for this MAC address because that hasn't changed, and then I'm going to refresh. And what you're going to see is this same MAC address has now changed to server 28. The AI has been able to update things in the backend. Now, this is a really simple update, but what about when we start talking about risk? If I go into risk and vulnerabilities or my inventory and I start dealing with some higher risk assets, let's say, we could look at a backplane or one of these other PLCs like Olympia, for example. And then we want to know what's going on with it. I can do something very similar, but I'm going to ask a very detailed question. I'm going to go in and say, can you give me all the threat intelligence and risk associated with this asset? Can you give me a detailed review Now we have a response, and it says the security posture of Olympia is currently high risk, the primary driven by a critical vulnerability, high volume of unresolved events, and approaching end of support lifecycle. So this is really important. So now we're getting some basic information, or I wouldn't even say basic, some detailed overarching information about this device. We know its IP, what it is, where it sits on the Purdue levels, what its criticality is, what its risk score is. We know that it has 37 vulnerabilities associated with it. We know what the CVEs are that are tied to it as well. And we see that there's over 50,000 unresolved events on this machine or this device. That's a huge risk. It'll go through, it'll give us a summary. It's going to talk about life cycles, but we could even go a step deeper. We could start researching CVEs. We could look at remediation plans. Now we're going to do all that today. The big reason I'm showing you this is that simple setting up a container, pointing a couple of addresses and getting a couple of API keys, and it's completely enabled to work with whatever that tool is. In this case, it's Tenable OT. But this is a massive change for agentic AI. It means that we can point to a server or to any kind of device. It could be anything, any kind of tool, and put an MCP server in front of it, and it means AI can work with it independently. And then you have a person that we believe should always be in the loop working alongside with AI to help make better informed decisions, because we can pull all of that information right in front of us and have a discussion. Hopefully this video has been helpful. If it has, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe if you want to see more like this. Until next time, have a great day.